But there are three takeaways slash overreactions that I have that I just gotta get into after watching some of these games. The first one, Victor Wembayama is an absolute problem. We already knew, right? The dude came into the league 7 foot whatever, right? I think he's 7'2", something crazy like that. They said over the summer he grew another 2 inches, and I see what it did to him. And look, after the game, which by the way, for context, anybody who didn't see this, and if you haven't, what's wrong with you? Check out the highlights. This man put on an absolute masterclass. 125-92 victory on the road against the Dallas Mavericks. Obviously, all the hype was around Cooper Flag for about the first 5 minutes. After that, the Victor Wembanyama show kicked in full effect. 40 points, 15 rebounds, 15 of 21 from the field, 9 of 11 from the free throw line. Oh, and by the way, 3 blocks and was a plus 31. Plus 31 on the team in this game. Bro, 71% from the field. And by the way, let's get into this for a second because it's very important. Victor Wembanyama, he said after the game, as everyone knows, Victor Wembanyama last season, his season was ended due to a blood clot issue. And one of the things that he said after the game is that he doesn't want to take things for granted after realizing how close he was to maybe potentially losing everything, right? And the reason for that is very simple. For those who are not familiar, Chris Bosh had to, former Miami Heat player, former Toronto Raptors legend, Chris Bosh had to retire from the game early for medical reasons related to a very similar issue to what Victor Wembanyama had his season end due to last year. So Victor Wembanyama saw things from a completely different perspective. And look, he went and, trained with Kevin Garnett in the summer. He was hanging out with Monk, shaved his head, learning new flexibility stretches and all types of stuff. He had a very active summer in terms of trying to really work on himself and more specifically work on his body after a lot of what he endured, not just last year, but even the year prior with some of the lower extremity issue things that he dealt with, right? And you could kind of tell in game one that he wanted to strut his stuff a little bit. Something I thought was really important in this game was, and it sounds silly, but how much Victor Wembanyama dunked the ball. Now, you might be asking me, like, what do you mean? Like, Victor Wembanyama, 7'4". He should be dunking the ball all types of places. Exactly. That's the point. Victor Wembanyama was averaging like 9 3-point attempts per game and 10 regular 2-point field goal attempts per game last season. That is absolutely ridiculous. That's for someone of his size, and I'm talking even when he was 7'2", which again still towers among many and is usually considered more of an in the paint big man. Victor Wembanyama should be a player that is constantly not just a double-double machine, but somebody who should be sleepwalking into a minimum 10 to 12 points in the paint by itself, just off of the mere fact that he literally towers over others. For context, and let me make sure I get the actual proper numbers, right? Yes, Victor Wembanyama was averaging 8.8 3-point attempts per game last season. So nearly 9 3-point attempts last season. And then he attempted 18 shots from the field in total. So if that's literally, if you look at it, that's literally a split of about 9 3-point attempts and 10 2-point attempts per game at 7'4". That makes absolutely no sense. So he comes into this game where he's dominating Anthony Davis, by the way. Anthony Davis looked very normal in this game against Victor Wembayama. Victor Wembayama was getting whatever he wanted to. And by the way, Anthony Davis, he had himself a pretty decent game. 22 points, 13 rebounds. 7 of 22 from the field goes to show you where Victor Wembayama played a big factor in keeping Anthony Davis quiet. But let's focus on Victor. There was a point where it felt like he was just putting together a dunking montage. And you can tell that somebody got to Victor, and it might have been Kevin Garnett for all I know, given the fact that he has a very good track record of kind of, motivating people to take on a challenge. He's actually challenged quite a few young players in the past to step up in one way or another. A lot of times it focusing on being more aggressive, things of that nature, right? So, but if it wasn't him, somebody got to Victor Wembayama and said, brother, you're too damn big to be taking all these threes and not getting to the basket. So Vic only taking 2 3-point attempts of his 21 field goal attempts in this game, I think was a representation of the turning corner that Victor Wembanyama desperately needed and needs to take in order to truly be the MVP caliber player that I think a lot of us think he's capable of being. At 7'4", 240 something pounds, even though he doesn't look like it, Victor Wembanyama at 7'4" should be dominating on the glass. And this game, where 19 of his field goal attempts came either at the rim, around the basket, or in the mid-range area, is the best way to maximize the frame that he has. All those 3-point attempts he took last season, yes, it's a great way to explore the studio space. It's also settling for less. If you're a player of that caliber, this is the kind of guy that should be sleepwalking into a 30-piece on a nightly basis. And that last night was a representation of exactly what he looks like when he is more aggressive as a scorer around the rim. I hope that this is a representation of what is to come for Vic, and more particularly, if we're talking about the San Antonio Spurs, this is the step that you want from Victor. Yes, it's nice to know that he can step out and shoot the three. I'm glad that he's somebody that's open to being able to shoot it at a certain high level volume. Having stretch bigs in today's NBA is an important facet of being able to build a legitimate roster. Sure. But the dude's 7'4". Like, this is, like, I don't know how else to put it to you. The dude's 7'4". Get busy around the rim. You're going to sleepwalk your way into 30 points per game. The proof is in the pudding. 40 and 15 against Anthony Davis, someone who's regarded as one of the top rim defenders in the NBA, even with the fact that he's relatively injury prone. Still considered one of the best rim protectors in NBA history, and he gave him buckets the entire night. My second overreaction. Anthony Edwards, he's ready. I think we already kind of knew there was something brewing with Anthony Edwards with what we've seen the last 2 seasons, right? The nickname that I gave him on the podcast that I do with my friend, the Hit Your Free Throws podcast, the nickname that we gave Anthony Edwards was the OG Slayer, right? And the reason why is because the last 2 years, he's put on a clinic against some of your favorite players' favorite player, right? LeBron James and Anthony Davis. LeBron James and Luka Doncic last year. The Golden State Warriors with Steph Curry. The Phoenix Suns when they had Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. Your favorite player's favorite player ran into Anthony Edwards, and Anthony Edwards came out on top in back-to-back seasons where the Minnesota Timberwolves were in the Western Conference Finals with a chance to go play for the chip. Last season, he did something special. As a hyper athlete, he decided, understanding that his team needed more floor spacing and needed an ability to open up the floor from a mid-range perspective by allowing guys like Jaden McDaniels and Julius Randle to have more space in the mid-range area. He needed to be more of a threat as a 3-point shooter. We know with his athleticism how much he can put pressure on the rim and punish defenders around the basket. But last season, he took it upon himself to be not just the Minnesota Timberwolves' best 3-point shooter, he was one of the best 3-point shooters in the league, not just from a percentage perspective, but also from a volume perspective. He was right up there with Steph Curry and Malik Beasley and Klay Thompson and any other player that you typically would throw into that conversation when you're talking about high volume 3-point shooting, both percentage wise and in terms of how many they take per game. Anthony Edwards, and again, this is against the Portland Trail Blazers, which is a touch and go, but I will say Portland has some solid defensive players on their team with guys like Drew Holiday, Toumani Camara, Denny Avdia, Jeremy Grant. These are all guys that are really solid on the defensive end. Toumani Camara just last season made an All-NBA defensive team. So, and Donovan Clingan, even with this only being his second year in the league, is a top flight defender at the center position. Now, that's a little bit different when you're guarding the paint, dealing with a perimeter player, but still one of the better rim protectors in the league already at his youthful age. Mans came out there, dropped 41, 7 rebounds, knocked down 5 threes, shot 50% from the field, and hit all 8 of his free throws. So he went 50, 50, 100 for 41 points and was a team best +9 on the floor. And usually, by the way, your star player, unless it's a blowout, tends to be a net negative in your plus minus just simply because of their usage level. That tends to end up being a really high contributor to their plus minus on a night-to-night basis. I should also throw out there that something else that's really important. Ant turned the ball over 4 times, but Dante DiVincenzo had 6 turnovers. So that goes to show you Anthony Edwards had significantly more on-ball usage than Dante DiVincenzo, yet Dante in 20 minutes had 6 turnovers, 7 points, and he was mainly more impactful as a defensive player, 2 steals, 2 blocks. Again, more effective as a defensive player, starting at the point guard position. Mike Conley came off the bench, and this one goes to show you that they are going to have to make a transition at point guard very, very soon. And it looks like in the beginning, they're going to lean on Dante DiVincenzo as opposed to going to Rob Dillingham, who actually did not play in this game. DMP coach's decision. But let's stay with Anthony Edwards. Again, it's an overreaction. But Ant Edwards, he's going to be in that conversation this year with Wemby, for example, for that MVP. Like, there's a couple of guys that after day one have kind of set themselves up to be a mainstay in the conversation of MVP if everything goes right as far as health is concerned. Victor Wembayama is going to be an MVP candidate. Anthony Edwards is going to be an MVP candidate. Jalen Brunson is going to be an MVP candidate. Luka Doncic, despite the fact that the Los Angeles Lakers are very questionable right now, and we'll have to get into that on a different episode, going a little bit deeper into some of their roster issues, because it does go deeper than DeAndre Ayton. Despite the fact that I kind of really ripped on him heavy the other day, it is a little bit deeper than DeAndre Ayton. Giannis Antetokounmpo will be an MVP candidate, right? There's already a couple of names that I can think of that are not just emerging, but will be consistently in that conversation all year long. If I had to put an order to it after one game, I would say my top 3 MVP candidates after one game is Victor Wembanyama, Anthony Edwards, and Luka Doncic. Those would be my leading 3 candidates after game 1 for all 3 teams, for every single team except for I believe the Nuggets and the Pacers. They're the only other 2 teams that haven't played yet. But after every team has only played one game, those will be my 3 MVP candidates that lead the charge. My third overreaction is actually not as positive as the other two. And it has to do with the Philadelphia 76ers. And it's that, and they got the dub on the road at TD Garden without Paul George. And mainly, the guy that I want to focus on is Joel Embiid. And my overreaction is that I think that Joel Embiid is officially cooked. And what I mean by that, it's pretty obvious, but what I mean by that is Joel Embiid had already told us going into the season he wasn't playing back-to-backs. He made that abundantly clear that he wasn't going to be playing back-to-backs anymore for the rest of his career just due to his injury potluck, putting him in a position where he just cannot physically do it. And he came into this game still kind of limited, and it was understood, but he just didn't look good out there on the floor. He played 20 minutes, finished the game with 4 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 of 9 from the field. And here's the thing. You can tell when a guy isn't right when they start settling. Of Joel Embiid's 9 field goal attempts, 4 of them were 3-pointers. He missed all 4, by the way, just to make things even more interesting. But he shot 11% from the field. 11%. And didn't hit a single one of his 3-point attempts. By the way, team worst, -16. And to contextualize that, the next closest person was Kelly Oubre at -8. Kelly Oubre played 33 minutes. Joel Embiid played 20. Joel Embiid was so bad in this game. It looked so underwhelming that Dominic Barlow closed this game. And that's not just notable because Joel Embiid looks like he's just like a shell of himself right now from an injury perspective. That's notable because this game was close. And of course, there's no playoff implications on the line or anything like that in game 1 of the NBA season. But the fact that Dominic Barlow, who had himself a good game, 34 minutes, 13 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. He did start in this game at the power forward position, ended up playing a lot of small ball 5 for this team in this game. The fact that Nick Nurse felt more comfortable closing this game, valuable crunch time minutes with Dominic Barlow, just goes to show you how far away from right Joel Embiid is right now. I don't think Joel Embiid's playing 65 games. I think most of us would agree that's the case. I don't think that Joel Embiid is ever going to be an MVP again, truthfully. I don't think he's even going to reach MVP status again. He's not going to be in the top 5 conversation for MVP anytime soon. And Joel Embiid through one game looked more like a hindrance than a help. And that's a tough thing to say about a former MVP, a guy who was an MVP just a few seasons ago. But Joel Embiid looks cooked. And shout out to VJ Edgecombe. We're going to talk about him in just a moment. Shout out to Jared McCain, who, when he gets healthy, I think is going to be a real contributor for this team. But if Joel Embiid remains this bad, like the ceiling for this Philadelphia 76ers team is so low. And a lot of people already don't have great expectations for this team, given the fact that we just don't know what to do with them after how hurt they were last year. But if Joel Embiid is this bad, it doesn't matter how good VJ Edgecombe is. It doesn't matter how good Tyrese Maxey is. They're going to be bumping their head on their ceiling way closer than where they would like it to be, because their upside is just non-existent without Joel Embiid being the 20-10 kind of guy he was before. They may be a fringe playoff team just simply because the Eastern Conference is not that dangerous, at least towards the middle/bottom. But like they're moving nowhere. They're moving nowhere if he's not a real threat. And through one game, and again, these are overreactions for a reason, but through one game, it's not looking good. Let's go ahead and move on to NBA Rookie Watch. VJ Edgecombe was absolutely special. He was the bright spot of this game.